Hello my dear friends, you're in the Military Summary channel, and this video we're going to discuss the most important events that took place during the previous 12 hours. We have a lot of very interesting updates, so let's start. And first we're going to talk about the Kursk direction where the Russians continue their offensive operation. Currently the main activities and the main clashes are taking place between the villages of Толстый Лухан, Зеленый Шлях and Nizhny Klin, where the Ukrainians are retreating. If you remember yesterday, we've been discussing the videos of how the Ukrainians were abandoning their positions and how the Russians were FPV droning and attacking the Ukrainian forces in the fields between the village of Lyubimovka, Nova Ivanovka and Zelený Shlях. And later we got additional videos that show us a bigger picture of what was happening. For example, in this video we can see the same story, the same episode of how the Ukrainians were running away, how the Ukrainians were abandoning their positions, and as you can see, according to this video, the Ukrainians managed to cross the river of Snagast and to enter the Ukrainian side of the foothold. And when the Ukrainians left the area of where the Russians could get them with FPV drones, the Russians began bombing the Ukrainians with multiple launch rocket systems. The last episodes took place exactly in this area. Most likely the video is archived of 2-3 days old. As for the village of Lyubimovka, the Russians continue clearing operation. Today we got additional batch of videos of how the Russians were attacking and clearing the Ukrainian positions inside of the settlement. In this video we can see several Russian FPV, several Russian personal carriers that were moving from the western to the eastern part of the settlement without any resistance from the Ukrainian side. Basically this video shows strong control over the settlement by the armed force of Russian Federation. And this is not like attempt to storm the village, it's already attempt with a rotation process or maybe with additional reinforcement before further moving deep inside of the territory that is under complete control of Ukrainian forces. A little bit further in the eastern direction we can see that for example Russian tank that was discovered by the Ukrainian FPV drone operators, and the Ukrainians as a result of artillery strike managed to destroy or at least to damage Russian tank. But of course that offensive operation wasn't so easy. We have a lot of videos with retreat Ukrainians, we have a lot of videos with Russian forces, but we also have the video of the significant Russian losses that they suffered during the first days and first minutes of clashes in the southwestern outskirts of the settlement. In this video we can see several Russian vehicles that were destroyed as a result of Ukrainian fire. I believe that during the next few days we will color the territory to the let's say west of the river of Snagast completely in Russian favor. During the upcoming days we're going to receive obviously additional geolocations. Now let's move further and let's talk about the Sumy area. Today the Russian sources also published the video how they managed to discover the concentration of Ukrainian forces on the territory of Sumy and how the Russians destroyed that positions with the FAB strike. Now let's talk about the Siversk direction. We have Siversk and the southern Kupiansk direction. The third day in a row we continue receiving updates that the Russians began clashes and assault operation on the territory of the village by the name of Tarskoye. We started receiving these updates yesterday, and these updates were provided us by different pro-Russian sources, and we continue receiving them on the 18th of October. So most likely today we're gonna receive first geolocations probably, or maybe the Minister of Defense of Russian Federation will confirm complete control over the settlement. As for the Siversk direction, today we have just one photo on the topographical map photo that shows that the Russians, as a result of clashes during the previous few days, managed to establish complete control over the highest point, over the hill by the name of Belagora. So this is the territory that was captured by the Russians, the let's say biggest position, and from this territory the Russians can control everything around. Now let's move to the Chasiv Yar direction. During the previous 24 hours the Russians managed to improve their positions. If you remember yesterday, the Russian sources published us the video how they managed to raise the flag in the most southern part of the city of Chasiv Yar. This is the moment we are talking about, and today, according to different pro-Russian sources and neutral sources, the Russians managed to improve their positions around and to take under control the territory along Seversky Donetsk-Donbass canal between the village of Klishevka and Ivanovska. We're talking about this part of canal, and the Russians managed to improve their positions on flanks. Most likely the Russians currently are much deeper, let's say in the south, or maybe maybe already in the central part of Chasiv Yar, because starting of 18th of October, we started receiving the significant number of videos of how the Russians began bombing and attacking the central part of the Chasiv Yar citadel. So once again, we believe that the Russians are much deeper in the central part of Chasiv Yar, and maybe the clashes are already taking place in this area of the city. Now let's move further. As for the city of Toretsk, we have just one post that was published by pro-Ukrainian sources, and the Ukrainians are saying that exactly in this point, the Ukrainians attacked and destroyed the temporary deployment point of the armed force of Russian Federation. Based on this pro-Ukrainian source report, we have adjusted the map in Russian favor. Now let's talk about the Pokrovsk direction. First, we're going to discuss the situation around the city of Selydove, and the situation for the Ukrainians in this area is becoming critical and vital. Basically, the Ukrainians lost their time, lost possibilities to evacuate personnel, and Ukrainians were caught in another cauldron during the special military operation. And telling the truth, this is the biggest cauldron ever, and since the battle for Mariupol, we were expecting that the Russians would encircle the Ukrainians in Gornyak Kurakhove, but for some reason the Russians slowed down their offensive operation, and they have almost established complete control, a complete cauldron, but the Russians stopped on the just operational encirclement, and they decided to regroup and to bring additional reinforcements to the city of Selydove to encircle the city completely. For example, today different neutral mappers reported about additional progress on the ground of the armed forces of Russian Federation, and according to neutral mappers, the Russians managed to physically cut the road between Selydove itself and Kurakhove, so this supply road was taken by the Russians. Furthermore, additional pro-Russian sources reported that during the day the Russians already managed to improve their positions further in the direction of Vishnyovo, and according to pro-Russian sources, this is approximately the territory that was captured by the Russians by the morning of the 18th of October. So obviously this is the significant progress, and that means that the second supply road between the city of Selydove and the city of Pokrovsk was cut. I'll remind you that currently, at least by the beginning of the 17th of October, the Ukrainians still had 3 supply roads. We're talking about this one. This is the straight road M30 between the city of Selydove and the city of Pokrovsk. Then we have another road, supply road, that Ukrainians used to have between the city of Selydove, then through the village of Vishnyovo, and then further in the northern direction towards the Pokrovsk. And we had Ukrainians had another road between Selydove and the town of Kurakhove. And as you can see, according to information we have, 2 of 3 supply roads were cut by the Russians physically during the previous 24-48 hours. And the Ukrainians still have just one road, M30, but according to information we have, the Russians are moving in this direction as well. And the thing is that today we got another geolocation that confirmed the Russian presence on the territory of these facilities. So this is the situation on the ground on the 17th of October, and this is the situation on the ground on the 18th of October. Most likely the Ukrainians lost their possibilities to use M30 road due to Russian FPV drone activity, and most likely the Ukrainians in the city of Selydove were encircled completely. Currently, we don't know for sure the exact number of Ukrainian forces that were encircled, but most likely during the upcoming weekend, the Ukrainians will try to evacuate. First, they will try to counterattack the Russians along the railways to restore control over the supply roads, and the Russians most likely are expecting this. And if the attacks are repelled, then Ukrainians most likely will try to break through the northern road in the direction of Selydove. Anyway, 1-2 weeks and the village and the city would be encircled completely, and the Ukrainians there would be encircled, or otherwise the Ukrainians need to begin retreating this upcoming 24-48 hours. Now let's move to Kurakhove itself, and from the city of Maximilianovka we got another video that confirms Russian control over the settlement. In this video we can see the Russian soldiers that were raising the flag and one Russian soldier that was taking Ukrainian flag off. This video confirms complete control over the settlement. As for the South Donetsk direction, we continue receiving different updates from the southeastern part of Katerinovka. The Russians are saying that as a result of clearing operations in this part, they managed to take a lot of trophies. The offensive hasn't been finished yet. The Russians continue attacks. There are still very heavy clashes in the village of Antonovka. In this video, we can see several FPV drone attacks on Ukrainian vehicles and equipment in this village. Further in the western direction, we have a Ukrainian tank that was destroyed as a result of Russian fire. So the clashes are very heavy, but most likely during the next 2 weeks the Russians will secure these two villages completely. Let's discuss a little bit the Zaporizhzhia direction, because during the previous 24 hours, during the previous night, we received a significant number of geolocations and updates. Obviously, despite the fact that there is no clashes on the ground and let's say big advances of the armored forces of Russian Federation on the ground, but obviously the number of updates are telling us that most likely the Russians are going to attack in the direction of Orekhov in the very near future. So now this is the situation on the ground. Let's discuss a few statements that was made by Zelensky himself and by the NATO organizations. I'll remind you that yesterday Zelensky ultimated some NATO countries either to accept Ukraine into NATO organization, or Ukraine will create their own nuclear weapon and they will fight with the Russians with the nuclear weapon they created. And furthermore, we have reports from different NATO countries and leaders that leading NATO countries are not going to invite Ukraine to the alliance. The Baltic countries are primarily in favor. As for the United States, there will be no positive decision on Ukraine under either Biden or Donald Trump. A diplomat told the publication this is on the condition of anonymity. Furthermore, we have reports that after Zelensky made statements about nuclear weapon, he has already started making excuses that he was misunderstood about nuclear weapons. Sometimes we create problems for ourselves. Now you are starting to do it. We have never said that we are preparing to create nuclear weapons or anything like that. Furthermore, he added that all countries should prepare brigades to replace the Ukrainian armed forces. This is another very important statement. Our message to all countries: prepare brigades. They can be a reserve and can replace our guys who are tired. They can replace them on the battlefield. This is another thing that confirmed that Ukrainians are, that Zelensky is saying either you are joining the war with Russia or we capitulate. The Ukrainians are not going to fight till the last Ukrainian. They will fight as long as possible, and probably in the end they will surrender if NATO countries don't join the war from their side. And that's it for this video. Military Summary channel reminds to condemn any violence in the world. Thank you for watching. Subscribe to my channel, put your likes to my Patreon, and have a good day. Bye bye.